esteemed guests. It's a real pleasure to be here today to speak on behalf of the UK government. I am Philip Smith, Development Director for the British High Commission in Uganda, recently arrived from Ghana and Malawi before that. But it's great to be here. I'm conscious that I stand between you, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, and lunch, so I'll try to keep my remarks as short as possible. As many of you know, the International Growth Centre is majority funded by the UK and is based at the London School of Economics, working with the University of Oxford. As proud partners of the IGC and MOFPED, we would like to congratulate the Permanent Secretary for another excellent economic growth forum. We also offer our thanks to everyone here today whose efforts have enabled us to enjoy such an insightful conference. I first want to acknowledge, as others have done over the last 2 days, that these are exceptionally difficult economic times, not just for Uganda, but globally. I recently landed in London Heathrow, a place where I hope to see many of you, by the way, when Uganda Airlines starts direct flights. But it was there that I first saw the impact inflation was having. Not only did I have to pay more than 20,000 shillings for a cup of Ugandan coffee in Starbucks, but I also had to pay over £100 for a tank of petrol for the first time in my life, equivalent to around 450,000 Ugandan shillings. Suffice to say, based on this experience, I too might soon be following the President's advice and moving to an electric vehicle. Here in Uganda, we know that some Ugandan households are having to take difficult decisions, in some cases choosing whether to pay essential medical bills or whether to put food on the table in the context of such significant impacts, especially for poorer Ugandans. I know it must have been tempting for the Permanent Secretary to look for quick fixes. I therefore want to commend the government of Uganda's cautious economic management of the shock to date. As the World Bank country manager acknowledged yesterday, Uganda's development partners acknowledge the government's recent fiscal consolidation as the only responsible policy response to the present problems. We also strongly encourage the government to continue its efforts to implement the agreed actions of the IMF-supported programme. It should also remain a priority to maximise use of concessional debt and utilise the significant development partner-approved funding for Uganda. These partnerships with the World Bank and the IMF will be essential to unlock low-interest debt, drive down interest payments and help preserve Uganda's long-held reputation for macroeconomic stability. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take this opportunity to shamelessly but briefly promote what we have been achieving through the UK's partnership with Uganda on development, on trade and on investment. Since 2015, our flagship New Tech programme has raised incomes by 15% for 170,000 households in northern Uganda, enabling 2.2 million individuals to adapt to climate change and supported over 1 trillion shillings of sales and investment in Ugandan businesses. We're enormously proud to be continuing this work, and we will soon be launching our new 175 billion shilling programme to help Uganda to create climate-smart jobs. Continuing the climate finance theme, where we were pleased to see at COP26 in Glasgow that Uganda was announced as a pioneer country for the Task Force on Access to Climate Finance. As we know, some $100 billion of climate finance has been promised to African nations. Since COP26 last year, the UK has been supporting government to establish a climate finance unit within MOFPED, and this partnership provides for a full-time resource which aims to secure global investment from both the public and private sector, ensuring that Uganda gets its fair share of climate finance. Of course, in order to attract increased finance, a published nationally determined contribution is key. The The UK is firmly committed to green growth and has recently reaffirmed its commitment to mutually beneficial investments through new British investment partnerships, which bring together a range of UK investment vehicles. These partnerships demonstrate the UK's commitment to building stronger, more transparent economic partnerships based on high-quality investment, technical expertise, and the ability to mobilise private finance without adding to debt burden. One important vehicle is UK Export Finance, the UK's export credit agency, which has capacity to support up to 9 trillion shillings of lending to Uganda, nearly 3 million of which has already been invested in 3 critical projects undergoing construction: Kabale International Airport, Kampala Industrial Business Park, and a solar irrigation system for agriculture. Other UK investments, the Private Infrastructure Development Group, which is an infrastructure project developer and investor, and Agdevco, which is a specialist UK investor in African agribusinesses, already have an investment portfolio of close to 622 billion shillings in Uganda, with over 22 projects supported. We are proud of our investments in energy and renewables that include solar plants, hydropower, and marine transport. And we're also making the most of the UK's expertise in agri-processing, with existing investment partnerships in pig farming, in coffee, and in cotton. And finally, the UK's development finance institution, now called British International Investment, has invested £160 million, that's 706 billion shillings, in 40 companies in Uganda, supporting nearly 5,000 full-time jobs. So let me conclude, ladies and gentlemen. The UK, as a long-standing friend of Uganda, is supporting investments across a range of government priorities by lending to businesses and lending to government. I truly believe that our British investment partnerships and their financing vehicles can be a game changer for Uganda. And as the new development director here, I look forward to working with many of you in this room. And despite the looming challenges to the economies of the UK and the economies of Uganda, I'm optimistic about the strength of the UK-Uganda partnership and the opportunities to come as we unlock our two countries' trade, investment and growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our chief guest, may I take the pleasure of inviting Ms. Justine Ayebare. She is the principal economist in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Justine.
Good afternoon. Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, DST, Dr. Suruma, and all our guests of honor, all protocols observed. I'm here to do a simple but also difficult job, and that is to summarize everything that has happened in the last 2 days. I will share just a bit to bring to speed the Right Honorable Prime Minister what has happened. But to the participants, not everything has been covered here. We will have a detailed report that we'll share later. So this is our 6th Economic Growth Forum, and we opened with remarks from the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the Country Director for IGC, and the World Bank Group Country Manager, who was representing the local development partners. And this was then followed by a plenary session from our PSST, who looked at fostering resilient growth. 3 thematic sessions have been held, and these have focused on these areas: climate change in Uganda, understanding the implications and policy responses; domestic resource mobilization; leveraging exports for growth; and domestic value addition. I will attempt to summarize what these sessions highlighted and also share a few proposed policy recommendations. As I mentioned, a detailed report will be provided later. So from the remarks from the country director of IGC, we were explained and were informed of the heightened global uncertainty, and this has come through most of the speakers with the issues of inflation and interest rates. And as much as we are looking to the light at the end of the tunnel, we were cautioned to make sure that that light is not a fast train that may come and knock us down, so we should prepare for external shocks. However, we do have various things that have been discussed to help us. One was, how do we use exports to drive the structure for structure transformation and growth. We also looked at measures to mobilize resources to finance investments and support our growth, and also to make the economy more resilient to climate change and other external shocks. The World Bank country manager also iterated some of these remarks, ensuring that as we respond to climate change, that we ensure that our infrastructure are climate resilient in support of the green growth strategy. The issue of constantly reviewing tax policies was mentioned, and that we need to analyze and see how appropriate our legal tax frameworks are to the current situation, and see how we balance the benefits and the cost of tax exemptions. As a country, we need to invest in human capital development, that is health and education, so that we have a fully productive population that contributes to growth. Right, Honorable Prime Minister, I'll take you through the summary of the sessions. In our first session, we looked at how we could foster resilient growth. As the global economy struggles with these challenges, these are not foreign to Uganda. We are struggling with various economic shocks, and these included the COVID-19 pandemic, the increase in commodity prices, the increase in interest rate, and also the increase in debt and climate change effects. Government has responded using various methods, short and medium term, but this has mainly focused on sound macroeconomic policies. The PS went ahead to be able to give key action points for Uganda to rebuild its resilience. This included boosting domestic revenue mobilization, ensuring fiscal sustainability, especially in the area of debt, maintaining macroeconomic stability through coordination of both fiscal and monetary policies, leveraging the private sector financing, digitizing of the economy, and also managing our climate change adaptation. In session 1, we looked at climate change in Uganda and understanding the implications and what policy responses we should have. We were alerted how we are the 15th country most vulnerable to climate change issues, and yet we are the 49th least prepared to adapt. So that means climate change is something that we need to take seriously. The issue of green growth is not just a statement, it's not a choice, but it's a strategy to survive. The session looked at different green growth strategies and outlined the options on how we can integrate climate change in our medium-term growth plans. It highlighted the potential for droughts to result in substantial economic damage and proposed some policy options to mitigate these losses. Some of the recommendations that came out from this session, including safeguarding our biodiversity and ecosystems, as these are fundamental for climate resilience. We need to mainstream and promote proactive use of drought-resistant crop varieties. As a country that depends a lot on agriculture, we can't just depend on rain to sustain us. So we need to be able to invest in this so that we have better produce. The issue of a climate facility came up, and also to look at various options like debt for nature swaps in the areas of tourism. In the second session, we looked at domestic resource mobilization. And here, the session discussed examples of how digital technologies have been used to improve compliancy We also looked at the possible tariff evasion and what measures the Uganda Revenue Authority could take to be able to increase our customs revenue. We also discussed the costs and benefits of exemptions and incentives that have been given. Some of the policy recommendations that came up from this session included considering to reform the main income tax holidays so that we promote investment by restricting who gets access so that it's someone that's actually benefiting. There were proposals on how to lower the price for digital tax stamps, as we saw from what was provided, that when the price was borne by the businesses, then there was less uptake, and that means we had challenges in compliance. There was also a proposal that there's need for the monitoring and evaluation framework for tax incentives to be assessed so that we are able to achieve the objective for the tax incentives. We were also informed that we need, in order to increase revenue collection, we might need to think about not just increasing the tax rates, but reducing the tax rates and increasing the tax base and also increasing the compliance. In the third session that was held this morning, we looked at how we can leverage exports for growth. Uganda has made progress in diversifying its export basket, but there's still more work that needs to be done. The African Continental Free Trade Area is an opportunity that we can utilize as Uganda, but we need to prepare ourselves so that we utilize it well. We have high regional transport costs, and these have presented a barrier to expanding production in the domestic farms. Some of the policy recommendations that came through were to prioritize investments so that we facilitate trade and reduce on the time and the cost of importing and exporting. For the areas of coffee, there was a proposal that we need to expand the hubs, quality hubs, so that we can improve the quality of the coffee exports. They do not have to be in one place, but if they're in the regions where coffee is being produced, then you increase on the quality of the coffee that is exported and also increase on the exports. There was a proposal to lower the costs of imported inputs, and this as we expand and use the different, the EAC region, the African Continental Trade Area. As we expand as a country, it reduces the tariffs that we on our imports and also allows us to facilitate global competition because we have low costs for the inputs. Agriculture is one of our main exports, and so the need to continue improving export performance and agro-processing cannot be left out. As much as it has been raised over and over again, we need to continue to improve our agricultural produce so that we have good quality products for export. The last session, which was on domestic value addition, looked at the progress that Uganda has made integrating foreign direct investment firms into the local supply chains. We looked at how PDM presents an opportunity for us as a country to be able to upgrade our domestic value chain in key agricultural commodities if government can provide adequate financing and guidance to the private investors on the opportunities that are available in these value chains. We also looked at the benefits of special economic zones that contribute to greater domestic value addition. Some of the proposals that came out was the need to invest in trade-related infrastructure and services, including well-functioning roads, ports, and airports, as well as custom clearances and other trade logistics to be able to support these special economic zones. To attract FDI, we need to enhance our legal protections for investors on the land, intellectual property, and to also streamline the criteria or the processes for entering and providing transparency in terms of investment opportunities. We also need to develop commodity-specific export strategies. The strategy for coffee would not be the same strategy for fruit. So we need to develop strategies that are specific to the exports that we have to prepare by identifying the regulatory barriers to those exports and also the opportunities for investing in these exports along the value chain. Thank you for listening.
I think we should give Justin a better hand clap for summarizing what would have been 30 minutes of all the sessions we've had since yesterday, 8:30 a.m. Right Honorable Prime Minister, may I take the pleasure of inviting the Honorable Minister of State for General Duties in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development to come and make his remarks and thereafter invite you to address our invited guests. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, honorable colleagues, members of Parliament who are here, the United Nations Country Coordinator, the World Bank Country Manager, the resource persons from the International Growth Forum, Dr. Ezra Suruma, former Minister of Finance, our technical teams from Ministry of Finance led by the Deputy Secretary to the Treasury, the champions in the industry and private sector players who are here, all resource persons present, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Right Honorable Prime Minister, I am delighted to welcome you to the 6th High-Level Economic Growth Forum, whose theme is building a sustaining economy to weather the future shocks. We have organized it in a hybrid format with some participants present here in the audience and the others catching us through our other platforms and virtual means. We have had, as Justin has said, we have had 1.5 days of deliberations on the challenges that are facing our economic growth trajectory, many of which are due to external factors. These include the increase in commodity prices, largely driven by global geopolitics, increase in interest rates in the developed economies such as USA, leading to reversal of capital flow to developing countries including Uganda, climate change-related hazards, and a slowdown in global growth, all of which are affecting our government's financial position. Right Honorable Prime Minister, I'm happy to inform you that a number of practical policy recommendations have been made in this year's Economic Growth Forum, including strategies for enhancing domestic revenue mobilization, improving value addition, boosting export growth, and opportunities for acquiring climate change financing. The implementation of these recommendations will go a long way in addressing the challenges faced by the economy, enhancing resilience to the future economic shocks, and boosting economic growth. They will therefore be used to inform our budget strategy for financial year 2023-2024 and a medium-term review of the third National Development Plan. Right Honorable Prime Minister, it is now my honor and privilege to invite you to address the audience and also officially close this Economic Growth Forum. Thank you.
the Honorable Minister of Finance, General Duties, the Honorable Members of Parliament, our development partners, distinguished participants and guest speakers, the media fraternity, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First and foremost, I congratulate you all for participating in the 6th Economic Growth Forum. Developing our country is a shared goal, and as such, identifying challenges to development as well as solutions should equally be shared, and as demonstrated through this forum. It is such a combined effort that will enable us to realize the targets in our 3rd development plan and Vision 2040 and the NRM manifesto. Ladies and gentlemen, like many other countries, the effects of COVID-19 lockdown slowed down our growth. We were doing very well before COVID-19. Nevertheless, Uganda's economic growth remained resilient, largely due to the timely interventions by government led by the President of the Republic of Uganda. As we are getting out of the worst effects of the pandemic, we faced some other risks. Inflation has been on the rise, largely because most global economies continue to lift all restrictions related to the pandemic. Like I told you in Parliament, this led to more demand of materials than their supply. And this has been made worse by the war between Russia and Ukraine, which has affected the supplies of key raw materials for our industries, such as those producing cooking oil, fuel, and soap. We have also recently been faced with a number of other natural disasters, such as floods, you know what happened in Mbale, droughts, and other climate change related hazards. With these kind of risks, achieving our growth potential is at risk that requires each and everyone's input. I'm therefore happy that discussions during this forum have been on building a self-sustaining economy capable of withstanding future shocks. Friends, I'm glad to know that you have provided recommendations on the following critical areas. 1, managing climate change, which is one of the major challenges we face now. 2, enhancing domestic resource mobilization, like the Minister said, so that we reduce on our dependency of borrowing. Number 3, enhancing the exports by taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the African Continental Free Trade Area, as well as the entry of the Democratic Republic of Congo into the East African community. I'm also glad to hear that you have also provided recommendations for enhancing value addition. Yes, this has already been our focus, and considerable progress has been achieved. And we have been able to address some of the major obstacles to value addition, such as access to reliable electricity and investment in roads. We are also talking about railway, and we have done a lot of progress in that area. But we need to do more, like you have all seen. We need to make power more affordable, to not more than 5 US cents. In addition, our new focus now on the parish development model as our game changer for programs that are fighting poverty directly in the community, especially the 39% of our people who are still trapped in poverty. We have hope that this is going to increase in production, and therefore we have to prepare so that we don't have a challenge of marketing. We must now take up all the recommendations from paper to practice. Our people want to see such recommendations changing lives through practical actions. I repeat, through practical actions. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by thanking the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, together with the International Growth Center, for organizing this discussion. To those who are new in Uganda, I'm told we have visitors. I request you not to go back to your countries without traveling out of Kampala to explore the beauty of this country. If you have some time, please visit the river, the longest river in the world, that is River Nile. You go to see our martyrs' shrine, the Namugongo martyrs' shrine. We have mountain gorillas. The most delicious food you have ever seen in the world is here. Organic. The culture, our music, and the weather, and many other sites. Honorable Minister and colleagues, with these remarks, it is now my pleasure to declare the 6th Economic Growth Forum officially closed. For God and my country.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our chief guest. Our chief guest, my humble request now is that we can all sit, the rest of us can sit, is that we'll have just one photo for accountability purposes. You know, I'm dealing with accountants. The DST is here. He might ask for accountability. So I request our chief guest, our Honorable Minister of State, Dr. Newfarmer, the DST, and our UN resident rep, plus Mr. Smith, to come. So there is evidence that we were all here. Right? So yes, our chief guest, so you will come. I will move away so that the journalists can get the perfect picture. Please, Mr. Smith. I think the other side has, I don't know which one has a longer, please Journalists decide. This side, I think this is better, right? Perfect. On that side.
Can this move?
Yes.
This can't move. If you can move this, I'm going to move
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Another round of applause for our chief guests and all our partners. We want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of a very, very successful 2 days, 6th high-level economic growth forum. And we want to thank the Right Honorable Prime Minister for joining us. I think there was one more journalist who was missing. There you go. Thank you very much, our chief guest. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for the chief guest. We'll allow the minister who will lead her. Thank you very much, Right Honorable. We want to thank you so much for joining us. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this really marks the end of the 6th High-Level Economic Growth Forum. We want to thank everyone who's been part of this conversation on behalf of the Ministry of Finance and IGC. We want to welcome you to lunch. As usual, lunch is in Katonga Hall. As you walk out, just ensure you have a coupon. If you don't, the secretariat outside will be able to give you one.